Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for making the time to join us this evening. My name is Michael, and I'm the events coordinator and publicist at Annie Bloom's Books. For those of you who aren't familiar with the store, we're located in Portland, Oregon, in the heart of Multnomah Village. Oh, gotta admit someone else here. And another person. All right, pouring in. Excellent. Annie Bloom's has been around for 42 years now, and we are still plugging along. The store is currently closed to browsing, as we have been throughout the entire pandemic, but staff are at the store every day from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weeknights and 6 p.m. on weekends now to answer phones and reply to emails. They love to hear from people who are looking for book recommendations. We were just talking about that before we let you folks in about how great it is to recommend books to people. I know the folks at the store really miss doing that. So feel free to give a call or email looking for book recommendations. If you know what you're looking for, you can just go right to our website, 24 hours a day, annieblooms.com to do shopping. We do curbside pickup, local delivery within a few miles of the store, and some various shipping options. We have some great readings coming up. On Monday, the 8th, we have local author Meg Weber with Joshua Moore. They both have new memoirs out. Meg's is titled A Year of Mr. Lucky, and Joshua's is Model Citizen, which is coming out shortly. On Tuesday, March 9th, we have local thriller author Philip Margolin. He'll be reading from his new Robin Lockwood thriller, A Matter of Life and Death. And on Tuesday, March 30th, we have another local mystery author, Emmeline Duncan, who is also known as Kelly Garrett. She has a new mystery novel called Fresh Brewed Murder. She's going to be on the mystery panel with 3 other Northwest mystery authors. And other events that you can read about on our website. Tonight, we are delighted to be hosting Jared Blank. Jared will be in conversation with Miguel de la Rosa of Vadela and Jane Cooper, past president of the International Dyslexia Association, Oregon branch. Annie Bloom's has Jared's book, Running the Distance, on our shelves now. You can order by clicking on this link that I'm about to throw into the chat here. The chat here. Boom. So you can click that link anytime to go and order Jared's book. We really appreciate it. Let me tell you about Running the Distance. Jared Blank was only 5 years old when he realized something was wrong. He could already tell that he wasn't like everyone else. He was having trouble learning to read, holding a pencil, using scissors, and tying his shoes. As it turned out, Jared had dyslexia, and he still does. With the help of his family, friends, teachers, and mentors, Jared learned to see his learning obstacles as opportunities. He also pursued sports and running as a way to excel, express himself, and help others. In writing this book, Jared hopes that sharing his challenges and experiences with school, work, and the World Marathon Challenge will inspire others who struggle to run their own distance and know that they do not have to do it alone. So Jared Blank, in January 2018, ran the World Marathon Challenge, as we just referenced, which is 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. That never seems possible to me every time I read that. To raise awareness and $50,000 for the International Dyslexia Association. Why? Because at the age of 5, he was diagnosed with dyslexia and sensory processing disorder. And with the support of his incredible family and community, he beat the odds. Jared graduated from USC and then went on to earn 2 master's degrees. He kept this part of his life secret for a very long time, afraid that the stigma of a learning challenge would alter how people saw him and the opportunities that he'd have. Now Jared is sharing his story. Dyslexia is not a limiting factor, it's a superpower. Everyone welcome Jared Blank.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that warm introduction and for Annie Bloom hosting this event tonight. Very grateful. We're going to be reading sections of the book, and before we do, I really want to introduce Miguel with Vadela, because they were really key in capturing this story with not only the visuals and the cover, but also making the whole thing actually come together through dialogue having this evening, talking about the behind the scenes of how this project Running the Distance came about. And also Jane Cooper, who really took a chance on me at a coffee shop back in 2017 when I approached her about wanting to partner with the International Dyslexia Association and doing this running project that was essentially a cold call to her and her whole team, and they just welcomed me and made me feel like the family. Also, in the audience tonight is our current president, Danielle Thompson, who's been just an amazing supporter of myself as well as students with dyslexia and learning challenges, and she's leading the branch to do great things. So I'm just very thankful for her leadership as well. But I'm gonna let Miguel and Jane introduce themselves before we start reading. And Miguel is a business entrepreneur, but I think what's really special about him before he starts to talk is his ability to build relationships and create sustainable business models. So Miguel.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Jared. I think your introduction was definitely covers a lot of the bases. I will say something that you did leave out is the fact that before I went into business, one of the first relationships that really kickstarted and inspired me to start a business was me meeting Jared for the first time. I actually quit my job at the same time Jared quit his job to pursue his dream of running all these marathons. And I decided that I wanted to run this marathon of figuring out how to become a professional creative. And the what resulted from spending almost 45 days out on the West Coast resulted in me starting a company. So yeah, I mean that through that whole entire experience, it was definitely more than just a business relationship that we cultivated. It was really Jared actually made me feel like a part of his family, and something that we'll probably touch on after the book reading is kind of the behind the scenes of how all this came to be. So really excited to share that part of the story. And yeah, I'll let Jane kind of take it from here for her introduction.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I'm Jane Cooper and I am a teacher. From my accent, you will hear I'm from South Africa. I grew up there. That comes into the story later on, as you will find out. I moved to this lovely city, Portland, 10 years ago. And I anticipated I was in a place where people knew dyslexia and I was going to be learning a lot. Little did I know that dyslexia wasn't something that people talked about. And when I came across my first student who was struggling in one of our local schools, I needed to find support. I needed to find who looks after students with dyslexia here in our city. And I found the International Dyslexia Association. That has been a journey over the last 10 years. And I am passionate about all things literacy. It opens up a world to all who read, and the importance of that as a human right, as we often say, cannot be underestimated. And so my journey and my hope is that everyone will have the opportunity to learn to read. So when Jared came along and he said that's his passion and he wants to promote it, I realized we'd found a friend.
Jane, would you do us the honor of reading the intro to the book?
Absolutely.
The forward that you wrote.
Absolutely. Jared, it was an honor to be asked to write this, and I shall begin. Who could possibly want to take on the World Marathon Challenge? 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days? And why? Over the course of 2 years, I have come to know Jared as an unassuming hero who is kind and generous and who has a distinctive enthusiasm for life. His disarming smile, wicked sense of humor, and sparkle in his eye set anyone in his company at ease. Jared's story transcends the personal. The vision, determination, and courage he mustered to conquer a challenge shared by so many won my true respect and admiration. You see, Jared is dyslexic. Overcoming the obstacles that dyslexia placed in his way required tremendous stamina and perseverance, the precise qualities that we all need to run the distance in life. As a teacher, I marvel at the innate curiosity that my young students bring to the classroom. Their insatiable appetite for knowledge is the impetus for learning. But what if the key to learning, in this case, literacy, does not come easily? What if a diagnosis of dyslexia gets in the way? If this book has caught your attention, you may have experienced the multitude of painful feelings and struggles that accompany a learning difference, be supporting someone who has dyslexia, or are wondering how to be an effective advocate. Regardless of the reason, reading Jared's inspiring account of excelling despite the odds is like having your own champion and personal coach in your corner. Jared digs deep and opens up to share a story that is raw, heartfelt, and poignant. He tells it through the lens and mindset of a dedicated athlete who has learned lessons through sport, in particular, collegiate football, and his first love, ultra marathon running. Which brings me back to the World Marathon Challenge and why Jared took on this grueling feat. In accepting this quest, he saw an opportunity to combine his love of running with an issue close to his heart. He chose the International Dyslexia Association's Team Quest fundraising platform to shine a spotlight on learning differences and bring attention to his personal mission to change the culture of how people with dyslexia are treated in classrooms across the country and around the world. I had the privilege of cheering Jared across the finish line at the end of the second marathon in Cape Town, South Africa. Representing his many supporters reminded me of just how many compassionate individuals it takes to support a student's success. Observing Jared's physical exhaustion as he crossed the line brought to mind the grit and the effort it takes to face each day and pursue one's personal best. His smile of satisfaction upon finishing reminded me that it is always worth the effort. To anyone doing something difficult, this book is for you. You are not alone. That's it. You're in for a great treat.
Thank you so much, Jane. And I will read chapter 1, Finding My Why. At a young age, I overheard someone telling my parents that I probably wouldn't graduate from high school. Although my parents knew better than to accept this judgment without question, for me, those words were devastating. I could already tell that I wasn't like everyone else. I was having trouble learning to read, as it turns out. I had dyslexia, and I still do. You might be wondering how someone with dyslexia ends up writing a book about running 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. It wasn't easy, but for me, learning challenges are a chance to turn obstacles into opportunities. Whenever I had to do something difficult or someone told me I couldn't do something, I did it anyway. Years ago, I learned that happiness, while nice, is simply a byproduct. It is not a goal. Working hard to accomplish goals that I care about makes me happy. It's why I find joy in learning and running, even when they are hard and I feel overwhelmed. In those moments, I grow. I find ways to figure things out. I improve, and happiness follows. Throughout my life, knowing that I'm not alone has been critical to my happiness. Therefore, helping others also makes me happy. Individuals with learning challenges and their loved ones need to know they are not alone. I've been fortunate to have the support of my family help me to get to this point. But what about all those who lack the necessary support system? Like other challenges I have faced in life, I knew that writing a book wouldn't be easy. But I'm doing it because I hope that sharing my challenges and experiences will help others like me and make them feel less alone. That is chapter 1, and we have a short video that we'd like to show. So again, I just want to reiterate the support that Vadela has really provided with the video you just saw. They created the whole thing, and Miguel was instrumental in that. Sean, who's also on the call tonight, played just a huge role in this book coming together. And before we get into the backstory of it, I just want to say that the book was written for the audience of dyslexics and learning challenge in mind. We wanted to create a book that was short, but packed a lot of information of what it's like to experience dyslexia, experience learning challenges, so that people could read it but not feel intimidated by it. And even for young people, each chapter cover really gives you an essence of the book. So somebody could really just look at all the chapter covers and get an idea of what the book was about without having to necessarily read it. So we just wanted to be thoughtful of that audience as we created this project, but I thought we'd let Miguel kick it off to how this whole thing became.
So yeah, thanks, Jared. So basically, you guys would never believe this, but before Jared and I met, no one really knew he had dyslexia. No one. And unless you were close friends or close family. And when I first heard his story, I was so touched by it to the point that I was like, we've got to do something together. I need to help you tell your story. I actually, before I even got a chance to speak with Jared, I actually spoke with Lynn, Jared's mom, and I was just so touched with how she presented Jared's story to me, and sharing in sharing just like these short little anecdotes of how like how he was as a boy, and coming in through his adult years and all the challenges that he experienced, but yet still carrying on a smile on his face, and really took every single challenge that came his way in stride. And that was something that hugely inspired me. And not only that, we both bond on the fact that we're both runners. So as soon as he was like, hey, why don't you come out to, and by the way, I'm actually tuning in from Orlando, Florida. So this was at a time that, again, as I mentioned earlier, I had quit my job, and Jared was like, hey, what do you think about helping me tell my story? I'll fly you out to the West Coast. We'll shoot, we'll film me running all these different races, starting with the San Francisco Marathon. Oh, by the way, I'm running it twice because it's the San Francisco Ultra. So he ran the marathon twice, and then turning around 2 weeks later, and then running another marathon in Oregon. I'd never been to Oregon before. I love the city of San Francisco. And I was like, oh, Jared, like, whatever you want to do, like this story sounds awesome. Like, let's film it. Low key in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't really have too much of a plan, but feels right. And I just went with my gut. And again, at a time when I was quitting my job, Jared had mentioned that he was also quitting his job. It was kind of like the chance to do it. Spent about 30 to right around almost a month out on the West Coast. And as I met Jared and got to know his family really, really well, I was like, this story is so much more than running. And by the impact of Jared just sharing his story with me, I wanted to be able to present it in such a way through video, which was how we initially we had talked about, hey, how else are we going to tell the story? We're going to put together a video and put together a crowdfunding campaign. And eventually we were like, okay, again, much more than running. We need to do something bigger than running. And I knew his goal was to run all these marathons, but we later uncovered the fact that the marathons weren't the difficult part. He had told me that writing this book was harder than running all 7 marathons around the world. And I distinctly remember the moment we were standing in Jared's kitchen, and we get done with these videos. You saw some of the footage from some of the videos that we put together. And we were like, we should write a book. And I challenged Jared, like, dude, you have got to write a book on your life. We knew that the story was compelling enough to the point that a book only made sense for him to write. But really, to be honest with you, I had no idea he was going to hit the ground running with that goal very soon after I posed him with that challenge. In my mind, I thought that a realistic goal would be to have a book done in the next 5-6 years after that. But he pretty much started right away. And I remember he gave me the first draft within months of me leaving Portland. So that was a very, very, I mean, I was shocked. I knew that he had the, was capable, but I'm like, wow, there aren't too many human beings out there that I could see doing that, much less running 7 marathons in 7 days in 7 different continents. So once planning for the book happened, we knew that we needed to leverage a lot of the resources that we had in our corner. Luckily, around that time, as my company started growing, we kind of have cultivated this community that conveniently made it really, really, really easy for us to put all the pieces together in order for all the creative for the book to come to life. We had a ton of video and photography content, and we were like, wow, like all these pieces are just conveniently coming together. So our team put together many of the designs that you see, and some of you on this call that have the book, you'll see that the chapter artwork in between each chapter, we had put together much like a scrapbook, and it kind of took on that sort of personality, like a scrapbook of Jared's life story. And it was kind of amazing, kind of running through it in such a way, because I had read the book multiple times, and in reading it, it was like, wow, like I've experienced it, and having conversation with Jared and interviewing him countless times, but really hearing it in such a way packaged in this story was just in of itself an amazing experience. So one of the things that for me, on like being on this side, seeing this book come to fruition from just a casual conversation leading up until now, is such an honor working with a guy like Jared, because it inspires me to take on any challenge that that comes my way with that sort of zest and positivity, because the number one thing, especially a common theme throughout Jared's book, not only just turning challenges into opportunities, but it's also understanding that you have so many people in your corner. You got so many people on your team. The biggest thing that really, one of the big things that inspired me about this book is the whole book is about that. It, again, much more than running, much more than just coming across these different challenges, but really one of the greatest themes that came out of this book is the fact that every single chapter talks about the person or people that he had in his corner to overcome those challenges. And it all goes back to it all goes back to within the book. He says, you're not alone. I am personally not dyslexic, but I still can very much relate. And anytime that I've experienced a challenge in life, maybe it's just a low point in life, maybe it's things just not going my way, or maybe an even bigger challenge than that, is the biggest thing to understand is that you're not alone. So that's kind of just like the brief synopsis of what led us to this book. And we're really looking forward to whatever comes out of this. Who knows? Maybe a movie. So drop in the chat, or like give us a fire emoji if you guys are wanting to see a movie one day from Jared. Oh, let's see, Jared. I think you're on mute.
There you go. Thanks, Miguel. And thanks for that synopsis. I was saying, Jane, I think something that's really interesting about this story is where Vadela really put the visuals together and kind of were the brainstorming of it. I really feel that the International Dyslexia Association, the Oregon branch, was really a part of this journey from the get-go. And I just wonder if you could take people back to that coffee shop conversation and kind of how this whole thing developed.
Absolutely. So how it all started and how our relationship began was an email from the head office from IDA to say there's this guy doing this crazy feat, and he's from Portland, and we would like you to meet him. Are you open to it? And of course, that was a no-brainer, of course. Why? Well, first, why wouldn't you want to meet this person? And then second of all, they're wanting to raise funds for the International Dyslexia Association. And not even a small amount. They'd set this goal of $50,000. And that, to me, when you know just how much it takes to train a teacher, just how much it takes to influence in the community and to make changes. Here was somebody who was really putting themselves in an amazing situation and wanting to do it for us. How generous, how incredibly generous. So that was our first meeting at a coffee shop. And coffee just is an alarmingly wonderful thing, because a lot of good things happen around a cup of coffee. And that was hearing Jared's story, working out, okay, so what are the next steps? And Jared, I think this is a good point for you to mention what your goals are, because that ties in to what the IDA's goals are. So if you'd like to mention that, I'll carry on the story.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. And thanks for taking the meeting. So the reference of goals, I mean, the overall goal is to change the culture around dyslexia and how people with dyslexia and learning challenges are treated. And I think there's ways to do that. And I reference really 4 points. And one is, if we have the right science-based reading programs and we are teaching through a systematic approach, not only can the students with dyslexia and learning challenges learn to read that way, but all students can learn to read that way, whether they have a diagnosis or not. So I really think a universal system with regard to a science-based reading program is imperative. I think assistive technology is the other aspect to this thing, that we need to teach our students how to use assistive technology, and that it be used as a tool and promoted in a positive light. We had a conversation on our Dyslexia You Are Not Alone Instagram Live, which we do Mondays at 7 o'clock Pacific time. And just empowering the student that we interviewed this past week was talking about how empowering it is when I can bring out my phone and it not be a big deal, but how much it lets me participate in the classroom. So I think really promoting that is important for these students. I believe all students, regardless if they have a documented learning challenge or not, should be allowed assistive technology and allowed extra time on exams that are helping them go from one level to the next, be it high school to college or college to the professional realm. The students that need extra time will take it and benefit from it, and the students that don't won't. And how I equate this is the same as if you run a marathon, usually they put an 8-hour time limit on the course. If you can run it faster than 8 hours, great. If you run it within 8 hours, great. It's giving people the opportunity to find success at their own level and their own speed. So I think that's really important. And the fourth thing that, and Danielle's on the line and really help me articulate this, is with regard to sports or extracurricular activities, be music, art, anything beyond the scope of the actual classroom, we need to eliminate grades being a reason to participate in those activities. So often we say a student needs to get such and such a GPA in order to participate in sports or other extracurricular activities. And I think we need to change that. I think it's an archaic system for what we know. We know that keeping a student in from recess isn't going to make them any more successful in the classroom than not. These students need to play. They need to partake in activities that help build their self-confidence and self-esteem. So that's really a goal and a charge of mine to change within our system as it lies today. But I will kick it back to you, Jane, to follow up on the rest of the story.
Yeah. So as you can hear, that Jared was able to articulate his goals so well. And what happened was that I was sitting there saying, but yes, that is what the IDA wants to do. We are passionate about bringing the science of reading and structured literacy to every classroom throughout the United States and the world. Literally, we know how children learn to read, and it is absolutely not it's reprehensible that we are continuing to have children in classrooms who are struggling to read when we know what works to teach reading and we're not doing it. But this is not because of it's not any fault of the teachers. It's because teachers haven't learned how to teach reading. The higher education is not teaching teachers how to teach students to read. And the result is that we have young people growing up not being able to read as they should. And more to our point is that students with dyslexia are not getting the help that they need in the classroom, which is a huge equity issue. If you have the wherewithal and the money and the resources to be assessed and to receive outside tuition to learn to read, all well and good. But what if you don't? What if you are in a classroom and you end up dropping out of school because you haven't learned to read? That is not good enough. We have to do better. And here was Jared, who was saying, I want to change the world. Can you help me do that? I want to be on your team. And we was like, yes. Because one thing that we have learned within the IDA is that telling stories, telling your story, is the way to change the world and to make a way for people not to feel alone. And that's not just students with dyslexia, that is teachers too. That is teachers who are feeling badly because they haven't been able to reach their students, and they want to know how to do that. And here Jared was offering to help us, and not only was he offering to help us with raising funds, but he wanted to get down there and speak to people and be involved with kids and young adults. And that to me was the game changer. Here we had somebody who was just willing to run the distance, literally, but also he won't stop until he sees his goal met, and that is reading challenges, and the way we teach reading changed, and kids' lives changed. So so that's how it happened. And then it was, how do we make this work? How do we tell his story, and how do we involve him? And I was lucky enough, as I said in the introduction, to actually be in Cape Town, South Africa, when Jared started off his marathon and set off. So it is literally the sweat and the pain of watching that second marathon, and he had 5 to go. After, it was a remarkable thing to watch. Yes, just how one's experience in life can be a reflection on the struggles of a learning difficulty. And that has set us off to the point where now Jared speaks with our students regularly. He tells his story regularly, and that just brings people in and encourages them to tell their story. And that is so valuable, because telling your story normalizes it, because people put up their hand and say, me too. And then there's a journey to be had. So at that point, I will hand it back to you, Jared. Have I missed anything out?
No, it's amazing. Thank you so much, Jane. On the topic of story, I was thinking, Miguel, you might want to touch on that and the power of it, just as Vadela's these great, amazing storytellers through visual, now through written. What does that really mean, and what does one do with that power?
Yeah, something that I always tell people is that, one, everyone has a story. So at minimum, in the entire world, if we each just had one, that's 7 billion stories. So you know that the stories are already there. Number two, we all have the tools in order to bring these stories to life. You don't have to be like a trained cinematographer. You don't have to be a writer in order to tell your story. You just need someone. You could even just be one person to light that spark and just listen. And something cool that you and I talked about as we were discussing goals of this book were, well, shoot, what are our goals for this book? How many do you want to sell? Or what, what happens if we fail? Or how do we measure a success of this book? And I distinctly remember telling you, Jared, that if we just touch one person with this book, that we will have achieved our goal. Now, I think all stories can change the world. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to, scale Mount Everest in order to have a good story or inspire somebody. I think the best stories are the ones that people can relate to. Like you said, when you go and speak and touch the lives of so many kids, really at this point around the world, since you've spoken in so many different places now, you could light someone else's spark to show them what's possible. Again, stories can take us so many different places. And whether that's a story that makes us cry, makes us laugh, makes us angry, they all can make you feel. And that's where it starts. And the reason why it's so important in business and in life is the fact that it starts with that. That's what sparks, it softens the blow between, okay, so we're the International Dyslexia Association and we're running a fundraiser. Or if you have a story in between that, it kind of softens that. It allows you to put yourself in that child or parent's position because of the story that you're telling. It goes back to the wow, I totally relate to you. In hearing your story, Jared, even though I didn't grow up with learning challenges, we had talked about running and I related to that story. And that's what inspired me and lit the spark within me to want to tell your story. It's very much contagious in the most positive way. The greatest stories are contagious. You can shift culture with good stories. So that's why the power of storytelling is world changing. And I think it's a very fitting goal for you to have this goal of changing the world because you've taken great strides towards that by telling your story.
If I can just give an example, the power of this book. I was reading this with my student, who is a grade 9 student, and after reading it, invited Jared to participate in the story in our little Zoom session. And one of the remarkable things was when he got to the chapter that said, the teacher said I wouldn't graduate high school. This little guy looked at me and he said, that could have been my mom. And the delight on his face was that his mom went on to be a doctor. And, it was just one of those experiences where it just grounded him on, you know what? This life is real and it has good endings. The other part that he absolutely loved was that Jared said he failed nap time. He chortled to himself because having dyslexia, there's one thing that people have in common: dealing with failure. Oh my gosh. And so Miguel, telling those stories, I just encourage all those who are listening in. Those stories are empowering, and Jared's stories are just littered through the pages of this book, and showing just in a very heartfelt way how he's dealt with them. So just very powerful.
Well, as we're coming up on the quarter hour, I wanted to we have this rule on our Instagram live show where the guests have the last word. And I wanted to give Miguel and Jane a chance to just one last word, and it doesn't need to be on the book, but it can be anything that you're just inspired to share with the audience about your experiences in business or education. And I'll kickstart it to Miguel to get the first one, and then we'll go to Jane.
I kind of alluded to this earlier as we were talking, but I will say that you have to remember that there's always someone in your corner to help you. And this is something I learned from you, Jared. Like, you're definitely someone that trusts people wholeheartedly, trusts really good people to help you through whatever challenges. I know it's hard to have the vulnerable conversation and ask for help. For some people, that's like the most difficult thing ever. And I'm guilty of it. Many times I've been a little too stubborn to ask for help. But in the times that I do, I find myself increasing my chances of winning the race, metaphorically speaking, because you have coaches along the way. Oftentimes Jared calls me coach, which is kind of cool because he actually is my coach. He coaches me in running, but everybody has coaches in their lives. Everybody has good teammates in their lives. And through whatever challenges come your way, know who those coaches are that are in your corner.
That's awesome. Well said, Miguel. And I do call Miguel coach all the time. So Jane.
There we go. I would like my last word to be dyslexia is real. Never discount the fact that some people find it really difficult to read. We have to do something about it. And the way to do something about that is to teach children to read in the way that they learn best. And our goal is that everyone should read, and we want to teach people to read the way we know. I see Danielle has put some excellent links in to structured literacy and how people learn to read. And yes, I do want to relate it to this book because this is a wonderful way for people to learn about dyslexia, which is a silent disability. Nobody asks an adult to read out loud. That's not part of what we do. Some people really struggle, and so you don't know. And we don't want people to hide that. We want people to be able to know what their struggle is, but more importantly, to know there is an answer. There is a way through, and we are here to help. Teachers are available to help. And so yes, be brave to ask for help.
Thank you so much. And just want to, again, thank Vadela and the International Dyslexia Association, Oregon Branch, and Annie Blooms for putting on this event and giving us the chance. We're happy to open it up to questions on the floor, but thank you so much.
Yeah, feel free to pipe up or type something in the chat and I can read it to these folks. Anyone? Don.
Hi, it's Donnie.
Donnie, sorry.
Hi, Jared. Hi, cousin Jared.
Hey, cousin.
I'm so glad that I got invited to this. I learned so much. This was an excellent, well-organized, informative presentation. And I'm just really thrilled for you, Jared, and your wonderful team. It's so exciting to me. And when you did that World Marathon, I told every person I knew, including all the Toastmasters that I knew, because it was just such an exceptional accomplishment. So bravo.
Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Really appreciate you doing that.
Thank your mom.
Always, right?
Yes.
Any others? Danielle's putting up some more information in the chat.
I'll ask Jared a question because it hasn't come up. Jared, in your book, you strive for excellence. And in this book, you talk a lot about that journey. Can you tell us a little bit about that whole process of right throughout the chapters, we're going along with you and you're striving. Can you talk about that and how you hope that speaks to people?
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely. It was interesting because I run with a group. Flex and Flow does a yoga studio out here in Portland, and they have a run group, and we usually go out sometimes in the dark of the morning. And we were running one day, and I was explaining that process, and I've explained this to Miguel multiple times when we were doing the 100-mile challenge. A lot of the times, it's going at it and not really and expecting to get crushed. And really knowing that I'm going in a situation that I'm not prepared for, I'm not ready for, but there's not really a way to there's this desire to want to go forward and willing to get crushed in the process. And from that learning experience of maybe falling on my face or not reaching the goal right away, I start to build awareness of how to move forward with it. And that can be in running, and that can be in taking on a master's program at a school, or that can be learning to speak to a group of students for the first time. So I think that willingness to fail, and fail hard sometimes, or maybe fail is even the wrong word, but that starts that journey, but it has a bigger vision down the road of what success would look like in those situations.
I've got a question. Jared, can you tell a little bit about, just so you leave us with a visual, some of your most memorable places in the World Marathon Challenge that you ran? So I'm thinking about when you presented to those school kids in the virtual assembly and the questions that they kept asking you, in particular, your first marathon, because it can be hard for us to picture that.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle.
Yeah.
So just to give a little context to the World Marathon Challenge, we met in Cape Town, South Africa as a group, and you have a briefing meeting and then you fly to Antarctica. And when you go to Antarctica, you get off the plane and you get taken to these bunkers, and you're in the bunkers until they know that the planes can take back off towards Cape Town, South Africa. And I think one of my favorite moments was just being in that anticipatory state of getting out of the bunker and getting to go run in Antarctica. One of the coolest places I've ever run. You're just going around this track of ice and cold, and a distance just full of snow is all you're seeing. But it's like one of the most peaceful places I've ever run in my entire life. So to give you a visual, this course is basically a 10K course, so 6.2 miles, and you're running around this airport, and half the time you're in the sun, but you're on this slight incline, and then when you turn the corner, you're on a slight decline, but you have a headwind and it's cold. So like half the time you're putting on your gloves and half the time you're taking them off, just because you're going through these phases of heat and cold. But that was one of I think one of the most epic places I've ever run. And then the other one that really stands out to me is Cartagena, Colombia, because we were running around the city at night. We were supposed to run the race in the middle of the day, but our plane was late, and we ended up running at night on can't remember the exact time, but it was at night. It was the same day as the Super Bowl. And so the Super Bowl was playing on one of those screens outside. They had it like on a projection, and we were able to run while watching the Super Bowl in Colombia. So pretty remarkable opportunity.
I'd also just like to say, as I see time is running, anybody who purchases the book from will be contributing their entire profits from the book go to the International Dyslexia Association. Jared has donated this book to the International Dyslexia Association. So he is not profiting, he is giving. He always does say that he gets a whole lot more from his interactions with everybody and learning from everybody else, but we are incredibly grateful. So any purchase of this book, you will be participating too in helping change reading and changing literacy in our country and in the world. So thank you, Jared, for your generosity. So grateful.
Grateful for you as well. Thank you for all the work that the International Dyslexia Association Oregon branch does for our community. It's really supporting people in need and changing lives for the better.
All right, well, if there are no more questions, then I think we've done it. Thank you, everyone, so much. This was really, really great. And again, the link to purchase that book and help donate to the Dyslexia Association there is in the chat. We're recording this, and it's going to be up on Annie Bloom's YouTube channel very soon, hopefully tomorrow afternoon. So you can take a look at that or point other folks to it if they want to check out this recording later. And the link will also be on Annie Bloom's website on the event page for this event. So yeah, you can check it out there too. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope to see you at a future event, and great meeting all of you. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.